close your eyes. No, not you. You're driving. The rest of you, close your eyes and imagine a world where you can stream all your favorite entertainment easier than ever. Now open them. You're in that world. A world with the Xfinity 10G network, the network made for streaming all your favorites. Forget about the hassle. With a reliable connection, you can sit back, relax, and enjoy the shows, or movies, or live sports. We know you're using your ears right now, but hopefully we've opened your eyes to the fact that the best way to stream is on the Xfinity 10G network. Restrictions apply.
I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Welcome to News du Jour. You may be wondering, why am I, Annie Bowles, here hosting this podcast? I usually start by telling people I'm a political baby. You see, my parents met working on Capitol Hill. By the time I was 2, I had been in my first political commercial and even got lost crawling around the West Wing. Don't worry, Al Gore found me. My family then moved abroad when I was 9, and I attended an international school in Brussels with kids from all over the world. And it is this type of global perspective that I also bring to our show. I graduated from American University in DC after studying political science and art history, as well as interning on both sides of Capitol Hill. I even interned down the hall from where my parents met. I'm now pursuing a professional certificate in journalism at NYU in conjunction with Rolling Stone magazine. I guess I was always that friend in the group who cared deeply about not just what was going on politically, but also globally. I often kept my own friends informed through high school and into young adulthood, so I guess I've always done a version of this show. I'm genuinely passionate about following the news, and I'm here to break it down for you guys every weekday. We always strive to be a calmer space to get your news. Or, as one listener put it, like getting your news from a well-informed bestie. I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, I hope you are all staying dry and warm. Here in Oklahoma City, in case you didn't know, in case you live somewhere else, it has been like a straight up sheet of ice out there. This is actually super typical Oklahoma type winter weather where it decides to hover around freezing. And when you get any type of precipitation, it then freezes and turns like the streets as well as the sidewalks, as well as your back deck and like any stairs, things like that outdoors into a sheet of ice. There's literally people out there ice skating on the roads. Pretty insane. And obviously this causes school closures even more than snow does because it's way more dangerous. So unfortunately, my son has not had a regular school week in 6 weeks. So long story short, if you are experiencing winter weather and you know some moms with, especially with young children, you know, send a little prayer their way, send a little text their way, bring them some food or something. They are not well. We are not well. We are all on the brink. So I just wanted to let you guys know today is a really light news day. I was kind of, looking around for stories anyway, but it is going to be a shorter episode because I'm also totally brain dead today. So with that in mind, let's jump into today's episode. Before we jump into today's episode, though, I wanted to remind you guys that the Wild Mother Creative Studio, which is a floral studio here in Oklahoma City, has generously gifted our listeners $10 off for Valentine's Day. So essentially what they do is usually bigger installations like weddings, as well as, works of art, film sets, things like that is what typically the Wild Mother will do in terms of florals. But for certain special holidays like Mother's Day and Valentine's Day, they do a pre-order offering, and each bouquet will be made specifically for you. Each one will be a little bit different, but they are all going to be so beautiful, you guys. I have never been disappointed, even when my friend Lauren, who's one of the owners, just brings me a random bouquet of wildflowers. They are always the most exquisite bouquets. They are works of art. And again, you couldn't go wrong with one of the top florists here in Oklahoma City. I hope they don't mind me sharing this story, but when Kim Kardashian needed to order some flowers for here in Oklahoma City, she called the Wild Mother Creative Studio. So anyway, they're giving us $10 off for Valentine's Day, and all you need is the code NEWSDUJOUR. So today we have one mini story. It's pretty brief, and then we're going to discuss some Ukraine updates, as well as Biden canceling another $5 billion in student loans. So for that mini story today, it was announced that Dexter Scott King passed away at the age of 62 yesterday. He was the youngest son of the legendary Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and he had fought a long battle with prostate cancer. May he rest in peace. So for our first longer story for the day, Ukraine, I wanted to give you guys kind of a lay of the land and a sort of, overall update, as well as some more specific updates. Let's jump in. According to Reuters, a few days ago, oil tanks at a large facility in Russia were hit by a Ukrainian airstrike. This obviously took out the oil, but luckily it didn't harm anyone. It was a strategic and successful effort to essentially down Russian planes and other vehicles due to a lack of fuel. This obviously complicated movements for Russian troops and vehicles and gave Ukraine a little more leeway in a war that has been pretty gridlocked. A representative for the Ukrainian government had also said that Ukraine hit targets in St. Petersburg, you guys, via drones. But that was a claim that Reuters could not independently verify, so just wanted to make sure you guys knew that. But if that's true, it's something that would likely terrify Putin because, as we know, this man is already an extremely paranoid person. So the last thing he would probably want is the war right on his own doorstep. And as we know, this is not the first drone attack in St. Petersburg that Ukraine has attempted or carried out. So this is Putin's worst nightmare, is that he is directly involved in this. He likes to send other people to go do his dirty work. So this would not be fun for Putin if it's true. That said, despite these, small pieces of progress, Ukraine is honestly running out of funds. They have been relying on the US and NATO allies, as we know, for aid, but the war is something that can't just drag on forever for either side. But as we know, Ukraine is running out of resources, and they've said as much for a really long time. They've been scrappy. There's no doubt throughout this war. We've talked about on this podcast how they would flood certain fields and do things that were, not directly going to use ammunition or troops, but that would help them advance in the war. But if they fold, you guys, then Russia will certainly be emboldened, and who knows who they would come after next. It would mean other independent nations could come under threat from Russia and expand the pain and suffering further across more borders. Let's hope it doesn't come down to that. We'll keep you guys posted. And then for our second and final story for today, I wanted to let you guys know that Biden is canceling another $5 billion in student loans. So Biden has now started restructuring how he is approaching canceling student debt. If you guys remember, there was a Supreme Court case that struck down exactly how he was going to go about canceling student debt at first. And so he's had to, sort of reinvent how he's going to do it after a few attempts were thwarted. So he's decided to pursue getting money to those who need it most, which is, by his determination, public servants, teachers, nurses, firefighters, and others who work to support communities in the most vital ways. They are the ones who are going to have their student loans forgiven first. President Biden canceled specifically about $5 billion in student debt for 74,000 people, according to the New York Times. Obviously, student loans tend to be important for people who are the most buried by them, i.e. young people. And this is a demographic that obviously Joe Biden not only relies on, but he's also losing right now. As we've talked about on this show, the war in Israel is just not something that young people tend to be in support of. So Biden is striving to deliver on other crucial parts of his agenda, like this, in order to show young people that he would still make a better alternative to President Trump come November. And that, for today, is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Rest is a fine medicine." I'm going to go get some of that now. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review on that platform or a shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us to be able to keep creating the news du jour and reach more people who need a calmer space to consume the news. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfree media, and that is also linked in our show notes. You can follow us on social media at newsdujour.podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. You can follow my personal account at It's Annie Bowles on both platforms as well. Any little noises you may hear in the background are my rescue pup. He has a little separation anxiety and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from
Want the same expert advice you get from the pros in the store while shopping online at DiscountTire.com? Meet Treadwell, your personal online tire guide that matches you with the perfect tire for your vehicle. Get your best match in 1 minute or less with Treadwell by Discount Tire.
There's a moment you realize you're ready for what's next in your career. Maybe it's when you're trying a new scone recipe and think, I could open a cafe. Or maybe you're helping a coworker and say, I could teach a course on this. Whatever your moment is, it's never too early to plan for a career that lives longer. That's why, the younger you are, the more you need AARP. For skills training, resume tips, and job listings, visit aarp.org/work.